A wild revelation coming from Phoenix Sun star Kevin Durant, who is talking retirement and what could be next for him once he hangs up his jersey. We're going to break down what KD had to say and kind of break down how many years he probably has left in the NBA right here on Suns Digest. My name is CJ Pierre. Thanks for joining us. We have got a loaded show with you, kind of all KD focus when it comes to the future of his career and with the Phoenix Suns. Before we get into that, we noticed about 82% of you guys have been watching our videos, and we appreciate that. But you haven't subscribed to the channel just yet. If you want to make sure you're keeping up to date with all of the latest Suns news, updates, and rumors as we head into training camp and into the upcoming season, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. Now, let's get into this news of KD as he is talking retirement. That's right. Kevin Durant, star of the Phoenix Suns, one of the best players in the NBA. He is looking at the tail end of his career. This coming off of winning Olympic gold and setting another record for himself, winning his fourth gold medal. KD is now heading into his age 36 season in the NBA, and he is looking at the potential that is this mortality in his career. He's have a sit down before he went off and for Paris with Dwayne Rankin of the Arizona Republic, and they had a sit down interview that Dwayne will be releasing periodically. He will be sitting down talking with KD about about him in the league and other things, particularly focusing right here is what we're going to be talking about on his potential when his retirement could be coming down the line. Katie had a lot of things to say when it came to his perspective on possibly retiring. He said, as I get older in the league and the league is getting younger, I tend to think about retirement more. Retirement creeps in my mind for sure. I honestly don't know what I'll do. I have a lot of different interests. I definitely want to stay around the game. So, AD, one of the best basketball players of all time, no doubt Hall of Famer. Just looking at the potential outlook on terms of what things may look like once he decides to hang it up. Because at the end of the day, Father Time is undefeated. He will essentially call it a career at some point. We do not expect Kevin Durant to be playing until he's 50 years old. And we can kind of break down exactly where we think KD will end up a little bit later on. Now, he went on to say, I want to continue to build off the philanthropy and do some stuff in our hometown, work with my mom and my aunt more. That'll be fun, but I truly just want to hang out and see what happens. We've built we've built up a lot over these last 16, 17 years, can kind of sustain for a while when I'm done playing. Now, Kevin Durant is very big on family. He talks about his family and the impact that his mom had, particularly when he won his MVP, where he just gave her all of the credit. We remember that very fondly when he was with the Oklahoma City Thunder. And now he continues to talk about, how important giving back to the community, giving back to his family, and be supporting his family throughout everything that he's done throughout his career. It is just, the kind of thing that makes you want to root for a guy like KD, even when he's contemplating what the tail end of his career will look like. Keeps going. He said it's going to be a huge transition. When he retires, been at this since I was 8 years old. It's been nearly 30 years of me doing this. Every day was centered around the game of basketball. There hasn't been any other lifestyle than this, so I just want to have some time and space and really step out of that matrix and figure out who I am as an individual and then step into something and be ready for it. So, Kevin Durant, just looking at things, trying to forward think. He's not talking about retiring this upcoming season or after this upcoming season. This isn't some retirement tour for KD that we're talking about here. But when you're a player like KD and you're as great as you are, you kind of, start to wonder like, am I going to see any kind of like decline in my game? And, do I want to be that in that position? A lot of guys, went their careers being one of the best players in the league, and that's just who they were. Other players had their peak, and then they kind of tore off and turned into, essentially role players. I think some comparisons can be like, let's look at Kobe Bryant, rest in peace. But he was basically, one of the top players in the NBA until the day that he retired. Even, during those last few years, he was, dealing with injuries, not necessarily peak Kobe Bryant, but still one of the better players in the NBA. Then you look at a guy like Dirk Nowitzki or Dwayne Wade, for example, where they kind of morphed into role players, where like they weren't like necessarily the star players that led their teams to championships like they both did, but they ended up turning into players who were just kind of there, pieces, their veteran presence on the team. I kind of think of Dwayne Wade when he, like, randomly with the Cleveland Cavaliers. It's just kind of not necessarily the Dwayne Wade I remember, the guy who was winning championships with the Miami Heat. Then Dirk Nowitzki, obviously he was obviously a star player, former MVP, and during the tail end of his career, he just kind of more so turned into this veteran presence on the Dallas Mavericks, being there when Luka Doncic got there and, kind of helping, quote unquote, guide him in his first season in the NBA. That's just kind of that image of Dirk Nowitzki that we saw, at the end. Is that something that Kevin Durant wants to do? Now, in my opinion, I don't think Kevin Durant's anywhere near the tail end of his like peak. I think if he decides he wants to retire, that's his own choice. But in terms of his ability and his talent as a player, I think he's got so much more left in the tank. So when we talk about how many years could Durant have left, at the end of the day, I think it's gonna just be up to Kevin Durant. He's entering, like I said, his age 36 season. I think he could potentially play into his 40s. And, I don't just mean like 40, 41. Like he could play into, 43, 44, 45. It just kind of depends on how much of the grind he wants to continue doing at this point. Now, again, we're talking like, you know, another 10 years of KD, maybe that's a little bit unrealistic. But I think in terms of just physically being capable of it, if he decides to try and keep himself in basketball shape, I don't think it would be that hard for him to do, particularly the kind of player that he was. Just coming off of his age 35 season in the NBA, he averaged 27 points per game, 6.5 rebounds per game, 5 assists per game, 2 blocks per game, almost a steal per game as well, shooting 52% from the field, 41% from 3-point range. Like, this guy is nowhere near, you know, tailing off into being some, also ran player in the NBA. He is still one of the top players in the NBA, one of the best players in the league. And I don't think there's any reason to believe that he could be slowing down in that regard. I think it's just going to be, what he wants to do and what things end up like looking like. Now, there's is one other significant factor that you also have to factor in with players who are in the league and are getting up there in age, and that's the injury concern. That's something that's been following Kevin Durant for the last few years. If we take a look at his last 5 seasons, the three with Brooklyn and his last two with Phoenix, injuries have been a major concern. Only playing over 50 games 2 times, and obviously, he had that injury plagued season, where he after when he was traded the last 4 seasons, and we don't necessarily know when the injury bug is really going to hit him to the point where it's going to be even more of a struggle. Now, last year he was relatively healthy, played 75 games, over the course of that time, but that's like almost if you combine his last 2 years with Brooklyn and the year with Brooklyn and Phoenix, like it's not a lot of games when you take a look at a high level player, a star player of Kevin Durant's caliber. So injuries are probably going to be the one thing that can really, change the motion, change the tone of this retirement conversation, surrounding KD. But when he's healthy, when he's on the court, he's still one of the best to ever do it. Given his style of play, being a guy who is able to shoot from the perimeter, really able to manage his skill, in terms of, working in the mid range, not necessarily the same attacker of the basket that he used to be. And I think that is going to allow him to stay relatively healthy more often than not. Obviously, things happen in the NBA. You jump up, you land wrong, you land on someone's foot, and like things can happen. You get a hard screen that gets set. Anything can happen, and unfortunately, we're knock on wood, we definitely don't want anything to happen to KD, particularly in this upcoming season when it's a win now season for the Suns. But I think that if KD wants to, like, if he wants to play out the rest of his career with the Phoenix Suns, for example, I think he'd have the option to do it, and I think he'd have the option to play for many years to come. I don't think it would be a far-fetched idea to see KD play another 5 years potentially in the NBA. That's kind of the window that I see personally for Kevin Durant. Obviously, where the NBA is going, it's much more perimeter oriented game. And the fact that he's still probably going to be one of the best players in the league, I think as long as KD wants it, he's going to be able to ball. And I think that is the most important thing to kind of take away from his comments. But that's just what I think. We want to hear from you guys. What do you think about Katie's comments about his thinking about the retirement and thinking about the end of his career, this Hall of Fame career that we've seen? And how many years do you think we're going to have KD still to watch in the NBA? I'm hoping it's many more. That's all I got for you guys this time. I appreciate you guys taking the time and hanging out with us right here on Suns Digest. If you want to make sure you keep up to date with all the latest Suns news, hit that subscribe button and you won't miss a thing. But that's all the time we got for you guys this time. We appreciate it, and we'll catch you next time. Go, Phoenix Suns.